In this week's Focus Report, we're exploring how Democrats and Republicans are courting the ideological fringe in Massachusetts and the impact on their prospects in November. On the Republican side, Charlie Baker is making his second run for governor, and he's the strong favorite to win the nomination. But his primary rival, Mark Fisher, says Baker is too liberal to be the GOP standard bearer, and he's not alone. For now, Baker is shrugging off the criticism, but as WGBH's Adam Riley reports, it could pose problems down the road.
When Governor Deval Patrick proposed housing children who'd immigrated illegally from Central America here in Massachusetts, the conservative backlash was fierce, including this rally outside the State House in July. Republican gubernatorial hopeful Mark Fisher was there.
We are currently supporting over 200,000 illegal immigrants in this state alone. It costs us $2 billion.
But Fisher's Republican rival Charlie Baker wasn't. According to rally organizer and WRKO talk show host Jeff Cooner, that's a sign of a bigger problem.
My conservative listeners believe that Charlie Baker fundamentally is a rhino. They believe he is a squish. He's a Republican in name only. He's an establishment Republican. He doesn't have any core Republican convictions.
Cooner says that on a slew of issues, illegal immigration, taxes, dysfunction at the Department of Children and Families, Baker is trying to please people at every point on the political spectrum. He thinks that's the wrong way to campaign.
When I look at Charlie Baker, I see a man who's pandering. I see a man who wants to be all things to all people. And I think fundamentally, it's going to damage his credibility. The Democrats will not back him, and I believe much of the base will not turn out.
It's a message Mark Fisher is happy to embrace. Almost no one in Massachusetts politics thinks Fisher, a self-described Tea Party member, will beat Baker in September. But Fisher predicts he'll benefit from conservative discontent.
We haven't had a choice in a primary between someone like Charlie and someone like me. This is the first time in a long time.
To say Baker seems unconcerned would be an understatement.
I'm going to continue to do as I said all along, which is to chase 100% of the vote. And remember, my mom's a Democrat, my dad's a Republican, so I grew up listening to both sides of every issue at our dinner table every night.
As he talks to voters, Baker says their concerns transcend ideology.
The vast majority of people in Massachusetts, more than anything else, they want to be able to find a job if they don't have one. They want to be able to keep the job they do have and pay their bills. I don't think those are Democrat or Republican or independent issues.
If Baker makes it to the final, that message should serve him well. At that point, his biggest challenge might be getting out the conservative vote. Rob Eno publishes the blog Red Mass Group and is a Baker backer. He says Baker's critics don't give him enough credit.
I mean, he's not a conservative. He's a center-right politician. But I know that Charlie Baker's for charter schools. I know that Charlie Baker on illegal immigration is someone that believes in legal immigration and that people that come here illegally shouldn't have benefits afforded to them.
But Eno also says that if conservatives are lukewarm on Baker's campaign, the candidate himself is partly to blame.
If I were Charlie Baker and I was his campaign, I would come up with 3 or 4 issues where they could make a clear distinction with Martha Coakley or Steve Grossman, or probably not Don Berwick, but maybe Don Berwick, and just run on that and have that be the focus of their campaign.
Then again, with a Democratic field that's light on charisma and a popular Democratic incumbent still in the corner office, acting like a moderate Democrat might be Baker's best path to victory. If not, Massachusetts conservatives will be happy to say, "We told you so." So it is worth mentioning that Charlie Baker got over 80% of the vote at the Republican state convention. Also worth noting that the past few Republican governors have actually run as moderates. Bill Weld, Paul Cellucci, even Mitt Romney when he ran back in the day. All that being said, I think nationally the conservative wing of the GOP is feeling rejuvenated and feeling strong, and that has created something of a headache for Charlie Baker.
All right, so Adam, let me ask you, if you're a frustrated conservative in this state, are you going to vote for Charlie Baker? Or are you going to turn and not vote at all? Or
yeah, I mean, come November, if Baker's the nominee, you could stay home. You could cast a vote for Scott Lively, the sort of hardcore social conservative who's running as an independent. You could vote for Jeff McCormick, who's also running as an independent and is kind of tacking to the right of Baker on some issues, including immigration. It seems to me like the rational choice, if you want someone who can win election and someone who can sort of serve to check Democrats on Beacon Hill, the rational choice I would think would be to grit your teeth and vote for Baker, but that's not necessarily how purists on the right or the left tend to think.
Well, let's find out a little bit more about that, shall we? Thank you, Adam, very much. Given the long odds facing conservative candidates in Massachusetts, why don't more Tea Party members rally behind moderate Republicans? Let's discuss that now. Here is Tim Sullivan. He's president of a chapter of the Massachusetts Republican Assembly and a member of the Republican State Committee. And we're glad that you're here with us on Greater Boston tonight, Tim. So let me ask you, I realize that you believe that Mr. Fisher has a chance to win the primary, but a lot of people in this state do not believe that. So if Charlie Baker is the nominee, will you vote for him?
Well, I thank you for inviting me here to talk about Mark Fisher and the Massachusetts Republican Assembly. The Massachusetts Republican Assembly has endorsed Mark Fisher, and should Charlie Baker win the nomination this year, it would be up to Charlie Baker to get our support. He would have to come around and change his positions on some of the things that we stand for.
Okay, I want to interrupt you for just a moment, and but want to ask you this question again, though. If Charlie Baker is the nominee, will you and your organization vote for him?
The organization will not endorse someone that doesn't stand up for Republican principles. Personally, I will be voting for Mr. Baker should he win, but I believe that Mark Fisher is actually going to win this primary.
Okay, let's bring in another voice. This is David Bernstein. He is back for a second night. Thank you very much. He's a political analyst for WGBH News and a contributing editor for Boston Magazine. All right, let's take a look at voter enrollment in this state for just a moment here. And I think when you look at these numbers, the two of you, you're going to see that this becomes really a numbers game, no doubt. So candidates who are leaning to the right, can they win in this numbers game?
Well, it's very tough, and that's, it's interesting. We talked last night about progressives pulling the Democratic Party to the left, and that can create problems. But when you look at those numbers, you see that there's room for them to do that and get away with it. The Republicans have less room to get away with that, I think, and that then the question becomes, the great debate that happens within the Republican Party often is, well, if our candidates are too close to what the Democrats are anyway, do we automatically lose those independents, the large group of independents? Do we need to distinguish ourselves to win them over on some key issues? And, that in some cases, certainly at the more local levels, I think that is true. And we've seen that work, in state representative and state Senate races sometimes. It's a tough case to make on the statewide level.
A recent poll in the Boston Globe found that Steve Grossman supporters, by a margin of 10%, have said that if Steve Grossman is out of the race in September, they'll move across and vote for Charlie Baker. Let me ask you first off, who are those Democrats?
I don't know who those Democrats are, but those numbers that you gave, let's face the facts. Most people don't vote in Massachusetts. Most people don't vote because they don't trust either candidate or all the list of candidates that are there. They see that the government is not representing their views. They stay home. Mark Fisher is offering a different voice, different from all the other candidates on both sides of the aisle. Mark Fisher is going to get people that don't normally vote back out to vote. People are energized for Mark Fisher this year.
I think energy is the key word. What we see a lot of, both on the left and the right, but it matters so much on the right, is that the activists in the party are the conservatives, and you see that all across the state. Those are the folks who come out to meetings, who show up, for door knocking and phone calling, all that kind of stuff. And if they are not on board, it's not just that you lose those votes, which may not add up to a lot, but you lose all of that energy, all of that, the on-the-ground field stuff that the Republican Party needs. I think that Charlie Baker is making sort of a calculation that he can get away without that. But I think that's, where does his field army come from if it's not coming from there?
So you think he's depending on the idea that a lot of people will come out to vote?
Well, he's certainly, I think he's hoping that he can run an air war and be on TV and get independents to come and vote for him. But what he's not going to have much of, or it's hard to see where he's going to get much of, is the hardworking, the people making the phone calls, going door to door for him, that we saw, for instance, with Scott Brown in his first campaign, first U.S. Senate campaign, where they worked very, very hard for him and really helped turn out that vote.
Right, but he also brought some Democrats over to his side.
Yeah.
He did. Mark Fisher is energizing pro-life folks. Mark Fisher is energizing Tea Party folks. He's embracing Liberty Caucus folks. He's energizing.
But are there enough of those in this state to get him elected?
He's also energizing Democrats. I was at the Rochester Fair with him on Sunday. We were greeting people who would readily say that they're Democrats. And when they would say, we don't like politicians, he would say, you know what, when I go to work every day, I put on my work boots and jeans and I make things out of metal. That's what I do. And they'd say, geez, you do? Why are you doing politics? He says, because I'm going to put my life on hold and fix what's broken. I'm not going to be a go-along to get along politician.
We're going to have to leave it right there. Tim Sullivan, thank you very much. David Bernstein, nice to see you again.